Today, I wanted to focus on negotiation and mediation orientation. So, have been talking about negotiation very deeply these last few days. And so, as we kind of move towards the latter part of the course, I want us to already begin transitioning ourselves more into a mediation type mindset. So, in today's lesson, what we're going to really be looking at is most of the time when we look at particular negotiations or mediations, we either see it as a task at hand and then relationship. And then there's a spectrum, whether that's low or high. I better like to look at this more so from either a problem solving lens or a transformational lens. And there's a difference in how negotiators or mediators approach particular conflicts depending on how they view the conflict to be. So, mediation is carried out differently by each of its practitioners. However, the general framework that most North American mediators work within is that of problem solving mediation, meaning the focus is on solving the presenting problem. This approach was so named and contrasted to another approach labeled transformative mediation by Bush and Folger in their book, The Promise of Mediation. In terms of general orientation, the main difference between the two approaches to mediation is how a conflict is viewed or conceptualized from its onset, how it is defined in the mediator's mind. When mediators using a problem-solving orientation are introduced to a conflict, they immediately see it as a problem that must and can be solved. Usually the problem is quickly framed in terms of seemingly incompatible needs or interests between the parties. The focus is then finding ways to reframe the conflict so that the needs and/or interests of both sides can be met or come to a close in order to be met simultaneously. Thus, a mutually acceptable win-win solution is sought. So, what are some of the characteristics of problem-solving mediation? Problem-solving or settlement-oriented mediation is by far the dominant approach in the field today. Its name implies precisely what it is: a process focused on solving a problem by obtaining a settlement. In the view of a problem-solving mediator, when conflict exists, a problem exists. And a problem exists because of a real or apparent incompatibility of parties' needs or interests. Therefore, mediators working within this framework will assess the conflict between the two parties and assist them in defining their difference in terms of a problem. If a conflict is set up as a problem, then logically a solution to that problem exists. Through the process of reframing the parties' positions, the mediator helps parties develop a common definition of the problem. This is the starting point for negotiating a solution that will satisfy the interests of both sides. The goal of problem-solving mediation is to help parties generate a mutually acceptable settlement of the immediate dispute. The settlement-oriented mediator usually explains that this is the purpose at the outset and defines a process that will assist the parties to work towards that goal. Of all the mediator's actions also are designed to facilitate that outcome. For example, emotions that might escalate anger and thus prevent a settlement are controlled. Issues that are non-negotiable are diverted, while parties are encouraged to focus on negotiable interests. Mediators tend to discourage a discussion of the past, as that often involves blame, which can make progress more difficult. Rather, parties are encouraged to focus on what they want in the future and develop ways in which their interests can be met simultaneously. So now let's focus on transformational. In their 2004 publication, The Promise of Mediation, Bush and Folger explicitly outlined a framework for the practice of transformative mediation. Although practitioners had already touched on the possibilities of mediation in this realm, Bush and Folger's work defined transformative mediation, in contrast to the dominant orientation of problem-solving mediation. Problem-solving mediation, as we talked earlier, is aimed at resolving specific disputes between parties and coming up with a mutually acceptable solution to the immediate short-term problem. In problem-solving mediation, the mediator normally plays a very active role in guiding the process. Instead, Bush and Folger proposed that mediation can affect much deeper changes in people and their interpersonal relationships beyond just remedying a short-term problem. They proposed a way of practicing mediation that seeks to address deeper levels of social life. In the preface of their seminal work, they stated that mediation's greatest value lies in its potential not only to find solutions to people's problems, but to change people themselves for the better in the very midst of conflict. By employing a specific perspective on mediation practice as well as specific techniques, they believe mediation possesses the power to change how people behave not only towards their adversary in a particular conflict, but also in their day-to-day lives thereafter. Mediation, in their opinion, can transform individuals. For mediators who adhere to the framework of transformative mediation, achieving this type of long-term change is more important than solving a specific problem between parties. There are two keys to transformative mediation: empowerment and recognition. The transformative approach to mediation does not seek resolution of the immediate problem, but rather seeks the empowerment and mutual recognition of the parties involved. Empowerment, according to Bush and Folger, means enabling the parties to define their own issues and to seek solutions on their own. Recognition means enabling the parties to see and understand the other person's point of view, to understand how they define the problem and why they seek the solution that they do. Seeing and understanding, it should be noted, do not constitute agreement with those views. Often, empowerment and recognition pave the way for a mutually agreeable settlement, but that is only a secondary effect. The primary goal of transformative mediation is to foster the parties' empowerment and recognition, enabling them to approach their current problem as well as later problems with a stronger, more open view. It should be noted as well that achieving empowerment and recognition is assessed independently of any particular outcome of the mediation. This approach, according to Bush and Folger, avoids the problem of mediator directiveness, which so often occurs in problem-solving mediation. Transformative mediation instead puts responsibility for all outcomes squarely on the disputants. Empowerment is used by Bush and Folger in a way that differs from common usage. It does not mean power balancing or redistribution, but rather increasing the skills of both sides to make better decisions for themselves. Specifically, Bush and Folger define the term empowerment as the restoration to individuals of a sense of their own value and strength and their own capacity to handle life's problems. They explain that through empowerment, disputants can gain greater clarity about their goals, resources, options, and preferences, and that they can use this information to make their own clear and deliberate decisions. Clarity about goals means that parties will gain a better understanding of what they want and why, and that their goals are legitimate and should be considered seriously. Clarity about resources means that the parties will better understand what resources are available to them and what resources they need to make an informed choice. In addition, parties need to learn that they hold something that is of value to the other party, that they can communicate effectively with the other party, and that they can utilize their resources to pursue their goals. Clarity about options means that the parties become aware of the range of options available to them. They understand the relative costs and benefits of each option, and that they understand that the choice of options is theirs alone to make. Clarity about preferences means that the parties will reflect and deliberate on their own, making a conscious decision about what they want to do, based on the strengths and weaknesses of both sides' argument and the advantages and disadvantages of each option. Developing clarity in these areas will strengthen the parties' own ability to resolve the conflict in which they are involved. This type of empowerment may be skill-based empowerment, meaning that parties are empowered by improving their own conflict resolution skills. Parties are empowered when they learn how to listen, communicate, analyze issues, evaluate alternatives, and make decisions more effectively than they could before. Empowerment occurs in transformative mediation when the mediator watches for opportunities to increase the parties' clarity about or skills in these areas. The transformative mediator aims to foster parties' clarity and skills in a way that allows the parties to maintain control of both the process and the substance of the discussion. Unlike problem-solving mediators, transformative mediators are careful to take a secondary role rather than a leading role in this process. It is said that they follow the parties around and let the parties take the process where they want to go. The second one, recognition. By recognition, Bush and Folger mean considering the perspective, views, and experience of the other. Recognition, they say, means the evocation in individuals of acknowledgement and empathy for the situation and the problem of others. As with empowerment, the effect of recognition and transformative mediation is meant to extend beyond a particular conflict and into the parties' everyday lives. In the long term, achieving recognition and transformative mediation should help expand parties' abilities and willingness to relate to others in a more understanding and considerate way. Recognition is something one gives, not just something one gets. It is the process of acknowledging one's adversary as a human being with his or her own legitimate situation and concerns. According to Bush and Folger, recognition must be based on empowerment and that parties must be confident in their freedom to make decisions regarding the course of their dispute. Given the importance of empowerment, transformative mediators allow the parties to choose how much they want to recognize the views of the opponent. It is possible that recognition will lead to complete reconciliation between disputants. On the other hand, parties may recognize each other to a much lesser extent and may be willing to suspend self-interest only momentarily or not at all in order to recognize the other. So there are many differences between transformative and problem-solving mediation. The only similarity is that each uses a third party to assist the disputing parties to deal with the dispute in a new way. That new way, however, differs considerably from one process to the other. And as you will see in one of the documents I have outlined specifically, the differences between transformative and problem-solving mediation when we look at assumptions about conflict, ideal response to conflict, the goal, the role of the mediator, mediators' actions during that time, the focus, use of time, and their definition of success between the two. So it's important to understand that problem-solving or settlement-oriented mediation, which is by far the dominant approach in the field today, is just what the name implies. Transformative mediators work very differently. They explain in the opening statement that mediation provides a forum for the parties to talk about their problems with a neutral third party present. It is explained that this can be helpful for clarifying the nature of the problem from both parties' points of view. It also helps disputants develop a range of options for dealing with the situation. This process should help the clients make their choices about how to proceed and may help them better understand the views of the other party. This understanding may enable the clients to reach a mutually satisfactory solution, or it may suggest other approaches for handling the situation. The settlement is presented as one, but clearly not the only possible successful outcome of mediation. So Bush and Folger have their 10 hallmarks of transformative mediation, and I outlined for those in one of the documents. So just to kind of name a few, one of them is, in the opening statement, the transformative mediator explains the mediator's role and the objective of the mediation as being focused on empowerment and recognition. And as you continue along in the document, you'll see 2 to 10, their big approaches to how to approach transformative mediation. The biggest one that we often see with a lot of our students as they gain or start to move into mediation and even in negotiation. So it's number 10. Transformative mediators feel and express a sense of success when empowerment and recognition occur, even in a small degree. They do not see a lack of settlement as a failure. So a lot of the times what we see in some of our students as they engage in negotiation and mediation is that within the time that they sit down to have the conflict resolution that they're trying to solve, and they see when they're not able to reach that moment that the whole situation was seen as a failure. And so that's really one of the biggest misconceptions about conflict resolution and one of the biggest things that we wanted to hit on early on.